Okay, so in the second part, we are going to talk about your academic journey.
Yep.
You grew up in Pakistan.
I did.
So what made you move to United States, and then what motivated you to, what triggered your interest in BME or global health?
So in Pakistan, the time, and I'm talking about here, mid-1990s, if you were interested in studying science, there were very few opportunities. Mm-hmm. So people either became doctors or engineers. So people who were interested in going for a PhD in science, there were very few opportunities.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons I looked abroad.
Okay.
I came from an academic family. I was always interested in academia. So my father, my brother, my mother, all were engaged in teaching and research in some form. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with that environment. Mm-hmm. And so I did all of my degrees in sciences, basic mm-hmm. sciences and chemistry. And then after I finished my PhD, I was interested in sort of going what I would call closer to the clinic or closer to the patient. So my PhD was much more fundamental on protein folding. And then I was a postdoc at MIT where we focused on cells, the sort of things that are closer, larger systems and also closer to the clinic. And I was a postdoc in bioengineering. Mm-hmm. And as it turns out, it's not unusual for people in bioengineering to come from all disciplines, whether it is physics or mathematics mm-hmm. or chemistry or basic biology, in addition to engineering. It was both a conscious and an unconscious decision to think about global health. So I had been thinking about global health even from the days of my PhD, thinking, but I would say in a smaller part of my research was, actually none of my research was focused, but certainly my own activism and my interests were focused on important issues mm-hmm. Of that time. But when I sort of moved through the stages of my academic career, I had this greater realization that I wanted to give back to community. And that meant community in Pakistan, but also community in low and middle income countries. Mm-hmm. And at BU, I was very, very fortunate in being in Boston in general and BU in particular, that I had mentors in public health mm-hmm. and in global health who really guided me how to think about these questions. So that has played a very important role. So unconscious, because I grew up in that part of the world where I saw some of these things. And even though I didn't act on this for a long time, they were certainly part mm-hmm. of my own I would say consciousness mm-hmm. and conscious decision that I would say about 10 or 12 years ago, I said that I want to spend part of my research and part of my time mm-hmm. where my writing, research, activism, and teaching can combine towards things that I care about. Mm-hmm. And that turned out to be things that are on global health, about inequity, about sort of social justice, using sort of the things that I have through my training.
That's awesome. So you mentioned like you did protein folding in your chemistry, in your PhD. So it's like, I remember you did chemistry PhD at the University of Chicago, and also you're very educated in physics and math. Yep. So how do you connect the dots and then apply them in your current research?
So, you're learning all your life. And I am a firm believer that your academic journey has to continue, both through formal training, but also training in the laboratory, training mm-hmm. through colleagues and collaborators. So certainly you have to take certain classes and you have to do certain things. But my academic journey, I would say, is continuing very much so. So what I have, I think, taken from that experience is being comfortable with quantitative reasoning and quantitative thinking, even though I'm not doing any protein folding, but I'm very comfortable with computational modeling that I sort of learned in that area. I'm very comfortable with sort of, I would say, basic theoretical approaches to address the problem. But I'm also very excited about the role of basic science. So the thing that I actually took is not just sort of set of tools, but also this recognition, this excitement about the necessity of fundamental curiosity-driven science, and how that plays a role. I mean, we see the current progress in COVID vaccines with mRNA, but it didn't sort of just start in 2020. It stood on sort of the shoulders of basic science for decades when people had been looking at mRNA. People had been thinking about mRNA vaccines in the 1980s. Even well before it was cool or the exciting thing to do. And that sense of the importance of basic science is critical. So that's one thing. The second thing, and sort of the computational approaches, the second thing that I think I find important is being able to appreciate the interdisciplinary nature of research, which is my own personal experience. as you noted, that I was trained in mathematics and physics and chemistry and physical chemistry, and my PhD was almost all theoretical. It was very computational. It was very heavy on physics side of things. Okay. And over time it changed, but it still gives me, I think, an appreciation for using tools of analysis and theory, whether that theory is in physics or in chemistry or elsewhere, and really creating theoretical frameworks that allow us to analyze things, even complex questions. Proteins may seem something that is very simple, very small compared to the kinds of questions that we look at now. But I think the training in complex systems, in being able to understand things that have many moving parts and trying to make some kind of sense out of that, is something that I still find very exciting.
Cool. And then what are the challenges you encounter in different stages of your academic journey as an undergrad, grad student, postdoc, and faculty? How did you overcome them?
I don't know if I overcame them. I think there are many failures along the way. I remember my first year of grad school being super hard. So when I finished undergrad, I thought that I was at the top of my class. I was very good. I came to grad school, and that was not the case. The classes were really hard. Chicago is a tough school. It was also very cold, different temperature, different environment. Yeah. So it was hard. I still remember my first exam. I'll always remember it, and it was a midterm in quantum mechanics. And it was on Halloween night, and the professor was really, really good. It was an open book thing, and I had no idea what she was asking. None. It was a 6-hour exam, open book. You could come and go, anything, and it was on a Halloween night. It was just hard, and I thought, and I got a D. I thought she made a mistake. Should have been an A. I didn't even know what a D was. But you realize that you're not that smart, and you really need to rethink the way you study. I was the first in my class to graduate from PhD, but I wasn't the smartest. I was just fortunate because I had great mentors and I had good friends, and I recognized that my limitations. And I think that's what we all have to appreciate, that we have to sort of get rid of that chip on our shoulder and recognize that no matter what room you're in, there'll always be people who are smarter than you. And that sense of humility is absolutely essential. Yes. I had great family support. I had really good mentors, I would say, who were very encouraging. And I have always been somebody who has been frank and candid and tell people that I need your help. And I'm not saying that I don't want to be prescriptive, because every person is different, every person does things differently. But I have always been somebody who has felt comfortable asking for help. And that has served me. So even in my academic career as a faculty, I had official mentors in the department, but I also went to other people and said, look, can you help me figure this out? I still do that. Even at this stage of my career, I hope I can offer help to others, but I'm the first one to ask for help as well. You asked what were challenging during the postdoc years. Well, so I was married in grad school, so we had and my wife was doing her PhD. We were at MIT, and what was hard was, so we couldn't afford daycare. It was very expensive. So between my wife and I, we took turns to take care of our son. And for 2 years, I worked from 6 or 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the lab every day. And she would sort of do it in the day because she had to take classes, and I would work at night every single day, day in and day out. And you just had to make do because we didn't have the money, right? So what do you do in that case? So you figure it out. So you work hard, and she was very supportive, and we said, well, in engineering you think about sort of variables and constants. A constant was the fact that we didn't have a lot of money, so we just had to make do. So we did that, and it turned out to be all right. So you just have to. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not, and my advisors never told me ever that you need to work the nights. Never. They were very supportive. They said whatever works for you. But I was motivated myself, and I wanted to make it work. So I created a system that worked well for me. And I want to do the same for others as well. Every person's situation is different. Their nature of stage in life is different, and one has to be accommodating. And my advisors were incredibly accommodating. They didn't care that I was not there when other people were, and my family situation was different. And but it was hard. It was a lot of work. But it worked out to be okay. And I, again, great mentors and a lot of support.
Wow, I'm kind of speechless. I have no idea how you could do that. It's like incredible. Okay. If you could go back, what would you do differently throughout your academic journey?
I would take a lot more humanities and social science classes. I think one of the things that we don't teach engineers is how, or scientists also, is how to really think about great global problems of our time, read more philosophy, read more history. I do try to do that now. Most of my work now is in partnership and collaboration with colleagues who are not in sciences and engineering, and I find that to be tremendously rewarding, enriching. I think one of the successes of American higher education system, and again there are many different systems in the world, is that liberal arts system has worked well. Unfortunately, it is becoming less and less so, and people already know on day one all the classes that they want to take, and I think that's a shame. I hope that people take foreign languages. They take a class or two in art. They will take more philosophy and history classes. I wish I had done that. I wish I had read more books. But in terms of my academic journey, I think the steps that I took were driven by the environment that you are in, right? What works at that time. So if I were to go back, who's to say that all the things will be the same? So you have to sort of realize you want to have your own passion and your own dedication, but you also have to realize and make the best out of the opportunities that are come along the way. So I think it's a harder question without we are all product of a system. We are not operating in a vacuum. So if I go back, I would love to change certain things, but I would also be cognizant of what else is happening in my environment and the opportunities that those environments provide.
I see. I'll go back a little bit. It's really interesting you mentioned you want to see the same thing from different perspective, but why is that important? Like a lot of people will just say, I prefer to focus on my own expertise because that will bring me the money or that will help me graduate earlier. But why do I need to care about arts or philosophy, history, things
So
like that?
first of all, this is a really good question. So I think there are 2 or 3 reasons. First of all, I think we all live in a society where people come from different backgrounds, and the problems that we are seeing in the world, whether they are out of racism or out of inequity or out of conflict, they don't originate in science. But we have seen this over and over again, especially when in a couple of years ago in the United States, there was a recognition that there is tremendous amount of racism. Scientists and engineers had no idea what was happening because they were unable to engage with philosophers and historians and social scientists. So if we want to be a productive member of society in a truly productive sense, not in a material sense, then we have to know who we are, what the society is, where we come from, what has not been good, and if we want to improve society. We often say that engineers want to create a better society, but that better society is not driven purely by tools. That is also driven by empathy. That is also driven by human interaction. We see conflict right now in Ukraine. We see conflict in all parts of the world. Those problems, if you want to solve them, will not be solved by better tools. Tools have a role to play, but we also need to understand humans, and all of us need to play our role if we want to live in a society. So that's one thing. If I were to sort of put that aside, the importance of humanities in becoming a better person with a fulfilling life at the end of the day, but there's also a practical reason. We see all the time when we talk to our graduates who go in the real world, they say what matters in the real world is their ability to engage with others, their ability their ability to understand different perspectives, to empathize, to acknowledge. And those challenges require us to go beyond our laboratory environment. A very small fraction of the people become professors or get to work in their own field. Most of us interact with people from all over the world. I had a student who worked at a major company, and she said that can you guess the amount of time it took me before I had to work with somebody from a completely different culture? And I was like, maybe 6 months. He said 1 day. Next day on my job, I had to interact with somebody, and my own success depended on that interaction, right? To be able to succeed. Somebody who came from a completely different culture and a different background. And if we have no ability to understand humans at a human level, then I think not only will we have a less fulfilling life and make less impact on society, positive impact, but we'll also be less successful.
I totally agree with you, and I feel like that's the whole purpose of university is not to get a high-paying job,
Absolutely.
but to be functional and then people who can add value to the society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also improve society and challenge things that are not working well.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so research is very innovative and creative, which requires a lot of mental energy. So as a veteran researcher, how do you relax? And then how do you stay productive in terms of like coming up with new ideas?
So I think there are two things. First of all, I think you have to recognize that there will be a point in your time when you will not be able to come up with very good ideas. That's why you surround yourself with people who are smarter. I'm very lucky that my students are a remarkable resource for new ideas. So I think I get a lot of my inspiration and ideas from them, both undergrads and grads, not just grads. So I am a firm believer in undergraduate research, undergraduate opportunity. How I relax, I read a lot. Different kinds of things, history and fiction and sort of variety of things. So reading is certainly something I do every day before going to bed. So I would read something. And in general, I think spending time with family is something that I find quite relaxing. When the weather is nice, even when the weather is cold. I find sort of walking to be very relaxing in general, away from phones and emails and gadgets, to sort of just walk and think, and just we are very fortunate that we can do that, and we live in a safe environment. So I find that to be relaxing.
That's awesome. Okay, and then the last question is, what's your goal for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I really want to establish ourselves and my research group and my partners in sort of thinking innovative approaches to address important questions in refugee health and well-being. So that's something that I really want to establish. But the question is not just of global health. The question is global health for a group of people that have no political, social, financial agency, that are often marginalized, almost always marginalized. They're also living in countries that don't want them. So how do you really combine some of these questions and then address solutions? And I don't want to say that I have solutions. It's more about learning and understanding and creating ethical approaches to understand that. So I really want that to be something that is going to be an important part of my own research, developing ideas and approaches, multidisciplinary inherently, that impact forcibly displaced people.